So continuing on from our previous entry, the Twin Dilemma, as everyone knows, I'm going through my history of my upbringing as a Doctor Who fan, and I'm going through all the episodes in the order to which I bought them for the very first time. Sylvester McCoy, logically, the first one to get for a budding Doctor Who fan was to get the final episode of the classic series. It was an episode written by Rona Munro, and of course, as many fans will know, it was not actually meant to be the final episode, but they were forced to have to write a farewell monologue, leaving it open-ended. And that is a damn shame. But to honor the fact that we're talking about such a monumental episode, I decided to bring in a dear, dear, dear friend of mine, all the way from across the pond to discuss this episode. It is, of course, WALSALLMATT. So say hello.
Hello there. Hello.
Greetings from England.
I even have a pint, sir. Yes, sir.
And now I feel ill-prepared.
Your guest is a borderline alcoholic, though.
So, out of curiosity, was this this your first Sylvester McCoy episode, or did you have another one that was your first?
It's funny because I was born in '84, so sort of first tangible memories was actually of remembrance of the Daleks, of the Daleks coming out of the shuttlecraft. But this was the first one that we actually recorded onto VHS. And I was 5 at the time, so it was pretty much my first Doctor Who video. And I played pretty much to death, really. So this was my key into Doctor Who fandom, as it were. Survival's got a very warm and fuzzy place in my heart. Because when you're 5 years old and you watch these things for the first time, it's amazing. This is the first time I had ever met the Master.
Oh, really? This was your first Master?
Yeah, this was my first. This was my first Master story.
Really?
So, yeah. I'd say because after that, I think the next time I would meet the Master properly would be the Five Doctors. Because I got them on VHS. Yes, to see. Yeah, I said it's crazy. It's a crazy old journey. So.
Now, compared to the early days of him as the Master, how would we say he fared in Survival?
Come to Survival, it's your first ever outing with either the Seventh Doctor and the Master. It's funny how you develop sort of preconceived notions that obviously weren't prevalent in the series, but you wish to God were. Like, in Survival, you'd got a lovely scene where in part 2 where the Master stood on the sand dunes. He just looks down and he stands there and says, "Good hunting, Doctor." And I'm just thinking, is that how Time Lords greet each other? And I just thought that would be really cool, because in part 3 the Doctor says, "Good hunting." Is this how Time Lords talk to each other? And I got more excited about that. So when you come to previous episodes in Doctor Who and they don't say that to each other, there's part of you is actually a little disappointed. but Anthony and his Master in Survival is it's quite a shame, actually, because I mean, given what we know from things like Trial of the Time Lord and other stories that he'd been, this was I just like this is where this story was just a gift for both Anthony and his Master and Sylvester McCoy, because they can sort of get to the core of their characters. So you got Sylvester McCoy in episode 1 being super mysterious, and to anyone mortal talking absolute rubbish, but he's been all sort of mysterious and talking about the hunt and things like that. And and the Master echoes that a lot, and drip with the darkness that Anthony Ainley did so well. And it's amazing. He didn't. I mean, in other stories, he was all sort of that bellowing laughter that he had. He didn't camp it up. He was quite still. He was quite contained. It's a beautiful performance. It truly is.
For the fact that now the actors knew that this was going to be the final broadcast episode of Doctor Who, it was actually nice to know that they did at least go out on something resembling a high note. I mean, I would say for a lot of the actors involved, especially the mainstays, this was like some of the best work they'd ever done, especially big shout out to Sophie Aldred. This was actually also for me my very first time with first full story with the Seventh Doctor, and it was the first full time I've ever seen Ace as a character. I knew, because I did a lot of research, I knew he had a companion called Ace, which unfortunately, in America, there's another Ace that came to mind.
What a comparison.
So it was odd to me that the Doctor had a companion also named Ace, a drastically different kind of Ace. And
thank God.
Yeah, thank God. And one who I'm gonna remember a lot more fondly. Unfortunately, didn't really know as much about the character. I knew she was something of a juvenile delinquent, but I didn't know her real dark history. I didn't know about her troubled history with her mother or anything like that. So on the Ace side, I did feel like I was jumping into the deep end with her, but I really felt that this still showcased why she was such a great character. And I actually throw down for people who are like all fawning over Rose and saying like she was like the first of her kind. I'm like going, honestly, we wouldn't have had Rose were it not for Ace.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more on that point. In fact, I've said this publicly, so it is a massive case of come at me. Is that not to sort of sit here and sort of belittle Rose's character, but certainly if you sort of put Ace and Rose side by side, I think Ace would have decked Rose.
Oh yes,
I genuinely think there would have been. I mean, Rose was synonymous for having that catty streak with Sarah Jane. If she was with Ace would have fetched her off of the table, and it would have been glorious to see.
The majority of a lot of survival, the whole majority of part 3 takes place in council estates all around a bland English suburb. All of that was done in this story way before there was ever such a concept that, oh my God, we have Doctor Who now hanging out in council estates.
Yeah, well, you do get the feel that when Russell T brought the series back, that must have been at the back of his mind to sort of echo, because it's quite odd. Is that's kind of where we start in the new series, because that's where it's ended. It's as we're talking now and thinking about it, it's sort of, I'd love to know if Russell T actually did that deliberately. A lot of the viewership of, especially in Britain, would have lived in areas like Perivale. I mean, I know for a fact, we do. To this day, you look at Perivale and where the TARDIS actually lands.
Yeah,
I could look out my front window here at my house and just go, yeah, that could be over there.
I know for a fact, I mean, Russell T Davies had nothing but fondness for the show consistently all the way through. And it's actually been reported that when the Seventh Doctor era, especially when he teamed up with Ace, I know that a lot of the praise for the show was actually picking up steam. It's just unfortunate that they set the air dates the same time as Coronation Street and all these other things in order to kill it.
Yeah.
It's as if they just didn't want to actually sit down and watch the show and realize that it was really picking up steam, especially in the last 2 seasons, because the writing was really getting back its mojo. I mean, and for myself, I mean, even though I'd seen Sylvester McCoy in the TV movie, this was my first real look at him, and this one really did show off like the fun aspects of him and the darker aspects to him. I didn't know that. At this point, I still didn't know that he was a doctor that was known to be a manipulator, but also at the same time, he could be a clown. So, seeing him very intently hunting cats in the first episode, but then very promptly in the second episode, tripping cheetah people with his umbrella and going, yep, that all blew my mind. And around that point, I was, wanting to make sure I saw like all the different doctors at that juncture. And Sylvester McCoy was a doctor that, I mean, kind of defied comparison. And now the more I reflect on him, he is actually kind of, I don't like to play favorites, but if you ever ask me, like, if I wanted to sit down and watch a classic series episode, I'm going to lean towards McCoy a lot more often than I ever thought I would. And this was a good start. I mean, Survival was a good start for me.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's funny. I think in many ways I was kind of spoilt when the videos were coming out. Because without realising it, I'd sort of watched an awful lot of, in fact, pretty much the whole of season 26 before I'd seen things like Remembrance of the Daleks and, sort of fan favourites like that, you see. So when people say, oh, I love Remembrance of the Daleks, or I love Silver Nemesis, and things like that, and I sit there and go, why? Because there's so many better stories. I mean, my hand on heart favourite Sylvester story ever. And this is even if you put a gun to my head and, threaten me with imminent death if I choose this one. It's kind of, I will choose Curse of Fenric.
Oh, yeah.
At least with season 26, you knew he was up to something, but he was a little more honest about the fact that he was up to something,
Chris Fenric was actually I think that was my second Sylvester McCoy story. So I guess I was backtracking with Sylvester McCoy, because to see him do what he does to Ace in that episode, freaking Tegan would have been, decked him and left. But I love the fact that Ace saw that she was teaching him. Teaching him a kind of a vital lesson. The thing I do find that's kind of a missed opportunity with Survival, and I don't know, maybe Rona Moreau may have actually written a scene of this, but it actually, I don't know if they had no choice but to make it a 3-parter, but it would have been interesting maybe at the end of the episode to actually see Ace finally go up to her adult mother and actually finally reconcile with her before finally walking off with the doctor. I would love to chat with Rona Monroe one day to find out if there was ever talk about that scene happening. But that would have been, they make an allusion. Patterson makes an allusion to her mother when he talks to Ace, when she meets him.
Yes.
For the first time. He says, your mother had you listed as a missing person.
Yeah. Funny enough, Survival was really much a bit of a game changer, because you look at Survival and you look at how they treated that story. And the one thing you can take away from it all was the fact that 90s Doctor Who, if they carried on, would have been the absolute best, because you brought up Patterson. He was literally, I cannot think of any other, in terms of classic Who, where this happened. He was the first character in Doctor Who to swear. And it was very subtle, because he's underneath that sort of squaddy Scottish sort of accent.
Oh, it's saying, "Well, the hell out of it." Yeah.
No, not that. He says, "Oh, you don't give a." He actually says, and you can go and look. And he says, "Oh, you don't give a toss, do you?"
Oh,
which is a British. It's very much a British sort of thing. That's a very much British expletive for not caring.
Yeah.
And to hear that as a kid, that was mind blowing. But because I think they played it safe, without being a short, sharp expletive. He sort of drew it out. He says, "Oh, you don't give a toss." He's just thinking, everyone goes, "Did he just say it?" Nah, ignore it. He didn't say that. Yes, he did. Survival was full of first times, really. It's out and proud that that Ace and Carver.
On a live tweet, I had asked, was there ever any talk about that sort of subtext when they were doing the script? And apparently, they never really put much thought into it when they were initially making it. It wasn't until long after the episode was gaining steam with fans that there was actually going, oh, there may have been I guess you could say it was like the Nightmare on Elm Street 2 of Doctor Who episodes, where people in retrospect are going oh, there's something going on there.
Well, that happened a lot. Like I said, that happened with Curse of Fenric, and that happened with a lot of them. Is the fact that you can imagine when you're in the production phase, you just write the script and get it out. Otherwise, we're putting up the test card at 5:15 on that night. But it's amazing how the writers and the team's subconscious was, the actors' subconscious. So, but like I say, it's now out and proud that Ace and Cara, cared very deeply about each other, and it was exactly what it does what it says on the tin, pretty much.
Yeah, well,
even Sophie Aldred. It's a very, very cryptic thing, but Sophie Aldred's on record saying that it was years ahead of its time, years ahead.
Yeah,
and I've got nothing, but it's amazing. The more you watch it as a kid, I got the Doctor and Ace, and they're being chased around by big cat people. Okay, so that's level one, and then as you get older, you always find different sort of level, because you sort of grow up. You grow up with the show. And you have one that's so expertly written, you sort of grow with the story. So the older you get, you find a lot more the subtext. So you're going to get to a certain age, and you can understand where Patterson and the Doctor come from. So I wouldn't be that age again if you paid me. And says, I can't remember, it was too long ago. At a certain point, there are fans out there that.
Well, now we know there really was a long. Now we really know it was a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's the expert. That's the expert level of writing. And
Mm-hmm.
season 26 as a whole had that.
It was
Um,
that was a masterclass of writing that entire season. I mean,
mm.
I can't wait till I get to my review of Ghostlight. When I get to that one, I'm gonna have a fun time trying to decode that one.
The way I see Survival, it's a bit. It is a very much a coming of age kind of story. I mean, season 26 is like the coming of age, really, because Ace goes from the brash, sort of just out for blowing things up and having
Yeah,
a whale of a time, and then there does come that part of your life growing up where you have to face some sort of nightmare, which happens in Ghostlight, and then you come to terms with family matters, which is in Curse of Fenric,
just Fenric.
and and then you find
And then
yourself.
survival is heavily about the discovery of self. And
Yeah.
also, I even kind of, when I was just watching it now, I kind of noticed that it also seems to be a parallel of the challenge of trying to hold on to your humanity, not just your humanity, but even the obligations and the difficulties of life. Because the one thing about the cheetah people, like the master observes, is that they are a fun-loving species, and that they live for the simple joys of the hunts, the chase, pretty much their full-blown animalistic urges. And it would be so much easier for everyone to just shed the obligations of adulthood, of growing up, and just cut loose and just go crazy. In another way, you could say the cheetah people are kind of a metaphor for Ace's juvenile delinquency, like maybe her troubled past, where when you're a kid and you do all these crazy things unsupervised, it's kind of freeing. And here she is in this environment where running around without any kind of supervision is readily encouraged. I mean, when you're someone like Ace with a history like Ace, how do you try to dodge that temptation? I mean, you see one of her old friends succumbs to it right before your very eyes the second he draws blood.
One of the last things that happens in the story is that Ace essentially loses a loved one, because you look at sort of Ace's progression.
Mm-hmm.
She's been tempted by boys. That's another juvenile thing. There's been people that she cares about that have they've either turned bad, or but they've ultimately they're still breathing by the end. When she feels something for Kara, and then she has her literally die in her arms,
Mm-hmm.
that death reveals Kara's actual true form. The last runs of growing up is accepting true loss, essentially.
Yeah.
And like I say, being cheetah people sort of being the a metaphor, if you like, for just being running around and having a wonderful time, which we'd all love to do. But
Yeah.
eventually, to grow up and accept it. The more I talk about it, the more dark that this story actually gets.
But that's
Even
honestly,
though it's a story that's told in the brightest sunlight you could ever possibly tell.
the brightest sunlight,
The brightest sunlight, yeah. It's all of a
with
sudden,
cheetah people that you want to cuddle because
yeah,
they're
they're
so fuzzy.
adorably cute.
They are, but even then, I'll still say, even for my woefully spoiled American sensibilities when it comes to special effects and makeup effects, I'm not going to lie. The first time Lisa Bowerman rides in as a cheetah person, and they have that one tight shot right on her face, that mask work and the makeup work, and I think there's some animatronic works in those masks, but it is stellar work. And
It
even
is
watching
exceptional work, yeah.
yeah, it still holds up. I remember even sitting down watching it for the first time with my mom. That one and Curse of Fenric, watching the Hemophobes, they really upped their game on the creature effects on the show in the latter years.
Yeah.
And I think the Cheetah People was definitely a big win. And big shout out to Lisa Bowerman and a big shout out to Lisa Bowerman and all of them, because they said that working in the quarry during that time was apparently insanely hot.
Yeah,
insanely hot.
I was going to say, in the middle of a British heat wave, apparently, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know, you you get very hot weather in America. So us British are just not used to the heat. So when the sun does attack, it attacks in force. And my God, do we know about it? And there's a wonderful, there's an anecdote. It's very well known, but apparently one of the extras, she was in the she's in the cheetah outfit, suddenly decided that her life was just not worth this. Literally, you see a cheetah head and fur flying and everything else, and she just waltzes off into the over the sand dune in nothing but a boxers for all the world to see. They put the monster players through a hell of a lot, but I think with Survival, it's the fact that the budget had to go somewhere. And you can see that the budget went into the costume. The upshot, not necessarily this wasn't a downside by any stretch of the imagination, is that it made Doctor Who very real at that point. In this case, this was happening on our streets, in a situation whereby I mean that lovely scene at the end. The Doctor's in the middle of the street, screaming at the top of his lungs, and all of a sudden you got some Karen comes over to you and starts bitching about the cats.
I was going to be nice and just say that it was a prototype Jackie Tyler. I was going
to say headcanon. It was one of the Tyler clan.
Yeah.
It was Rosie's auntie or something like.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's
go on, we'll stick with that.
It's Rose's auntie in Perryvale. I think that's yeah. Rose's aunt is a Karen.
There you go. I think the thing is, nothing surprises me about that.
So I guess the last thing really to make mention about is the writer herself, Rona Munro. It must have been kind of a blow to her when she wrote this one to find out that the story that she wrote and that was made turned out to be the last one broadcast. The last person to have an episode aired on Doctor Who was a woman, and I can only imagine if she caught what kind of hell she may have caught, like a lot of narrow-minded people screaming, "You killed Doctor Who!" And the one thing that does make me happy about her is that time went on, she actually did end up writing for Doctor Who again. She wrote the episode "Eaters of Light" from the Capaldi era. I actually feel the more times I watch that one, I actually do consider it kind of an underrated episode. It's a very unique one.
I looked at it this way: is that what a way to go, though? I mean, they could have. Let's say if you still had the stories of season 26, if it ended with just Ghostlight, might have been the last one recorded. But imagine if that was the last one to go out. Not only would it have fucking confused everybody about them, not only would it have absolutely confused everybody, but it didn't have the same. It didn't have the same gravitas. Didn't have the same pathos. Whereas with Rona, had Doctor Who bow out in possibly the most glorious way it could have possibly have done. This case of he saved his companion. His companion is now this fully grounded character that could have gone off into the world of her own accord and survived and had wonderful adventures. And
it's like if they knew that this was the end, this could have been a good send-off for Ace. This could have been a good final episode for it if they chose.
It cracks along. It cracks along.
It really does.
Pace. And what I like about it is the fact that, yes, it was the end of a season, but it does have that kind of end of season feel that you get with a lot of TV series. Whereas you get to the last episode and you think something's going on here.
Yeah. Especially with between the Doctor and the Master.
Exactly.
As well.
It tied a lot of the story strands up. So I do get the impression that they had shaped a lot of it in the edits, because you had the world's out there speech that Sylvester McCoy does.
Well, I know that when I think that Sylvester McCoy actually said that he's always had a habit of being the last person they tell about these things. And I think, if I remember correctly, he found out that the show wasn't going on when they called him to come record that monologue.
See, that makes a lot more sense. But that was a very kind thing. I must admit that when they were making those last moments of the show, that was a blessing in its own right. And it was also a very nice thing to do. It was a way of giving the fans that little snippet of hope.
Yeah.
In case of, the Doctor could, this could return and this could happen.
Yeah.
And, if it does happen, if it doesn't happen, because the future of Doctor Who was really in the balance, so they never knew that they were coming back from one season to the next.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
and it was even the
I can
7
only
years it
imagine.
took. Even the 7 years it took to get to the TV movie was tumultuous in itself. The loopholes that Philip Siegel had to go through just to get that made was crazy.
That was a miracle that ever got made.
Yeah.
So when they did that, those closing moments, that last monologue as they walk off,
Mm-hmm.
a blessing in disguise, because it didn't leave the fans going sort of, oh well, that's us done, and we know our place. It's a case of, no, we'll find a way of coming back. It might not be as you expect it, but we'll be back.
Yeah.
And thank God. And thank God they were, because they had the comics and they had the novels.
Yeah, the comics, and then ultimately in 2000 we got the Big Finish kicked off.
Yes,
and now that's
Big Finish,
and now that's become an empire. Survival, obviously not the wrap-up episode we wanted, but given the fact that it was the last one for a good 16 years before Doctor Who would officially return to our television screens, it was definitely a good one to fuel our fire, to make us miss. Yeah, to make us miss Doctor Who.
Yeah, it was strong, and nobody wussed out at the end. Treated the audience right. I mean, it's quite funny that they treated Doctor Who so badly, and yet when they start to treat it right, and they start to treat the audience right, they don't pander. They don't make them. They don't talk down to them. It's a very on the level script. It's strong. It's just a shame that the only people that hated Doctor Who at that time were the BBC.
Fortunately, there were many fans who kept maintaining that for the next 16 years, and then finally it came back, and I don't care what anyone says, it is still the juggernaut that we still know and love it today.
Right.
And it will change. It will change. It will keep changing, but you know what? So does the audience.
Mm-hmm. I must admit, if Rona Monroe's still writing, so I'll get Rona to write for the 13th Doctor. I say, blimey, do you not feel that in your depths?
I feel it. Rona Monroe,
Rona
Monroe, if you're catching this, talk to Chibbers and just get writing.
Chibnall, I'll show you how to fucking write the Doctor. Let's do this.
Hey, the one thing I'll give to Chibnall is that everyone who's writing for the show who's not him are doing wonderful work. It's a show that has catered to multiple generations as it comes.
This is true.
Yeah, you can't just go around saying, not my doctor, because here's the thing, it kind of was never meant to be your doctor, because it's the doctor that's belonging to the people who are discovering it now.
Yeah, absolutely.
The most important thing to do right now is learn how to enjoy it altogether. I mean, that's why it drives me crazy, people going around screaming, not my Ghostbusters, not my Star Wars, not my this, not my that. It's like going, guys, you got to take yourself out, you got to do some
take yourself out of the equation.
Here. Yeah, take yourself out of the equation and come to the realization it was never just yours to begin with.
I mean, it's funny. There's an anecdote that sort of just leaps to mind. When they're, I can imagine when they're writing new Doctor Who or new Star Wars or new anything. There's a gentleman called Des Skinney. He was the one who created Doctor Who Weekly, which is what Doctor Who magazine became subsequently. And he went on, like I say, when they were formulating the magazine. And he told the team, so look, we're writing this and it's based on Doctor Who. Don't write it for the fans. They'll buy it anyway. Write it for someone new.
So that is our retrospect on Survival, the final episode of the classic series. WALSALLMATT, thank you for joining us.
Absolute pleasure being here.
And all you guys, if you want to check up on his channel, it is all in the info below. Definitely check his stuff out. He is doing an incredible replay of the CD-ROM video game Destiny of the Doctors, and he is incredibly entertaining in doing so. So definitely keep your eye on that. In the meantime, for more addictive content and Narcotic Casserole, simply like, share, subscribe, click. Now shall be served.
Will you stay still, you idiots? I don't know how many times I gotta tell you not to move. You moved. You moved.